Hello everyone, welcome back to the course Python Fundamentals Building Blocks for Aspiring Developers. We have ended the second module and now we will start with the third module, which will focus on control flow. So this is the agenda for this module. Again, it spans over 4 days. Today, day 9, we will cover conditional statements and logical operators with conditional statements. Then we will have a look at loops, and then we will see how different iterations can be performed for different data structures that we have learned. And finally, we will go a bit advanced and see what nested loops are. And let's begin with conditional statements. So conditional statements, what are these? So these allow us to execute different blocks of codes based on a condition. Like I say, if this condition exists, then this piece of code should be executed. Otherwise, we do not want to execute it. So it has basically three keywords: if, elif, elif. It is a short for else if, and then else. If you look at the picture, it would give you an idea of how it is done. So we have a condition. If that condition is true, which means yes, then execute the code in that particular block. No, then execute the code in the else block, or just not execute the code in the if block. So this is how we can use these control statements to execute a piece of code based on conditions. So let's have a look at these with examples in Python. So first, let's look at the if keyword. So it looks really simple. We specify a condition with if, and if that condition is true, then the code within the if statement, within the if code block executes. Now you see how we have used the indentation. The print statement is indented, or is 4 spaces from the left side, which means that this code is part of the if statement. So what it is doing is that we have a variable x which has a value of 10. It checks if x is greater than 5. So if you just remove the if for now and just recall that we learned that we could compare the variables and values. So x is greater than 5. Will that return true or false? Obviously, it will return true because x is greater than 5. Now it says if x is greater than 5, this means that if this particular condition is true, which in this case is true, then it will execute the code within this block. So the code that will be executed is print x is greater than 5. This will be executed. Now if I do not want to use the if statement only, I want to use another condition. I want to use two conditions on one variable x. Then I can also use the keyword elif. So it is used to check the additional conditions if the first condition is not true. So let's say if x is greater than 5 is not true. In this case it is true, but if it was not true, if x had a value of 4, then the first if condition would be false. Then it would say, okay, this is false. Then it would go over to the next one and see, okay, there is an else if or elif here. I need to check this one. So it will say, okay, if this is true, then it will execute the code. Even if it is also not true, then it will move out. Now we can also have multiple elif statements or else if statements with one if. Like I could write one if, then write 4 else if statements under that one. It will check each of them and then execute the code for which it is true. Once the true condition has been identified, it will not check the rest of the else if statements. And finally, we have the else keyword. So it is used to execute the code if neither of the condition is true. If the condition that we have specified with the if keyword and with the else if keyword both are false, neither of those are true, then we have the else keyword. This is there if you want to print out something if all of the conditions you have specified before are not true. So it will execute. We do not need to specify any condition here because it does not need any condition. Um, in this example, again, the first if will be executed because it is correct. But once we start seeing at the examples, we will try out with different ones. You can also use the if if keyword as it is. You can, I mean, you can just say if condition. You do not want to include an else if condition and neither an else condition. You can only put if, like this. In the first example, we only have an if condition. That is also correct. But if we want to use an else if condition, we need to have a if condition above that. We cannot use else if as it is. Similar is the case for else. We need to have a if condition before the else keyword. But we can have it this way that there is no else if condition. We have else, if, and then else. So we can also omit the else if keyword if required. Now let's look at the logical operators. We learned about these in one of the starting lectures. So this will be a quick overview. So it will allow us to combine multiple conditions. Now we can use those conditions in the conditional statements with if and else if keywords. So there are three types of operators we know: and, or, and not. These are just some examples for them. If you just um, omit the if keyword and just look at the conditions with the and in between, it is the same exact as we did before. So if this condition is true, then the code will be executed. If this condition is not true, if when I say this condition, I mean the complete, including the and. X is greater than 5 and x is less than 20. This is one condition. X is greater than 5 is not one condition. The complete condition here with the and operator is one condition for if. So this is the same. It goes for the same concept for and, or, and not. We know what or does and what this not does. So we will also have a look at this in the code. So let's start coding. So what I want to do is first open up Visual Studio Code. So let's create a new file here. I'll just keep it as it is. I can do new file. Let's say module3.py. Hit enter. We have module 3 open. Let's close this one. So let's first start with the if condition. So let's say I have x is equals to 10 and I say if x is greater than 10, I say print, or let's say 5. Print x is greater than 5, and after that I will say print code ended. Then just save it. So let me just explain this real quick. We have a value of x, then we are using this condition to evaluate this. If this is true, then this code will be executed. Now this piece of code which is outside this if condition is not dependent on this if condition. Like, it will always be executed. Only the code within this one will be dependent on this if condition. Now you see how we use indentation here. Like, if it is indented 4 spaces, Python knows that this piece of code is for this condition. Then we say, okay, we now want to move out of this. We just remove the 4 spaces, so it is now at this level. We can also have multiple statements here. Like, I can say print something else. I can say print x has a value of, and we did plus string and x. We can also do this. You must remember this one, using the plus keyword and then converting the integer into a string, so we can concatenate both of these. So we can add as many statements as we want, as many as we want. But once we want to move out, we just remove the spaces. Okay. So now let's go ahead, run the code, and let's see. So it says x is greater than 5. Okay, because this seems correct because this condition is true. X is greater than 5 here. So it says x is greater than 5, and it also executes this statement. x has a value of 20, and then this one, code ended. Now if we reverse the condition, now this condition is not true, x is not less than 5. So this should become false. So it says if this condition is false, then do not run the code. This condition needs to be true for this code to execute. So let's see, save it, execute it. So it simply says code ended. It just prints this line. It does not print any of these because during the workflow, it goes to this line. This line is empty. It goes to this line, checks. It says, okay, this is false. I do not need to execute any of the code in this if code block. So it skips this code and moves here, then here and here. So this is how if condition works. Now we can also have an elif condition. So we say x is, let's keep it like this, x is greater than 5, and we say else x is equals to, or we say x, let's keep it, x is equal to 5, this, and we say print x, right, x has a value, x is equal to 5. So now let's see what it does. Run the code. Again, x is greater than 5 because this condition is true. Now this condition was true. It did not had to check for any of the following conditions. If this condition is true, it will just execute the code here, skip all of the rest else if or else statements, and just move on with the code. Now if this condition was false, like this, then we run the code. So it says, okay, this condition is false. Now it checks for this one. This is also false because x is not equal to 5. It just skips both of these. Now we can make the value here 5 and do this. So now it says this condition is false because it is not less than 5. It checks for this one. This is true. So it prints this piece of code. We can also have multiple statements. Let's say elif x is greater than 5. Yeah. Print x is greater than 5. I need to change this one. X is less than 5. So what do you think? Which one will be executed? Let's run the code. This one will be executed because this is still true. Now if I do it like this, then run the code, first one will be executed because this one is now correct. And if I change it to 8, save it, and then run the code, now x is greater than 5, which means that this condition is now true. So you see it checks all the conditions. Wherever the condition becomes true, executes the code and just skips the rest of the code for the if code blocks. Now we can also add a else condition. Now for else condition, we do not need this, do not need to specify condition. We can simply write else, then we say x is greater than 5. Now you can have 1, 2, 3 spaces in between. This does not matter for Python. So let's do it like this, run the code. It says x is greater than 5 because this condition is not true, this is not true, so it will print else. Okay, this condition must be true, or this is the only condition left, so I need to print this one. Now if I remove this one here, instead of removing, I will just comment it. So this means that this line is just skipped and it is like non-existent for Python. Now it says if x is less than 5, do this, else do this. This again, x is greater than 5. It doesn't matter if we do not put any else if in between. We can also test it for this. The first condition is true. Yes, it is true. X is less than 5. So you see how we can use a combination of these if and else if statements to get the output and run specific code blocks. Now we can also do logical operators in between. Let's say y is equals to 10. I want to say this. So I say if x is greater than 5 and y is greater than 5, we say both are greater than 5. Then I say else if it is x is greater than 5. If I say x is less than 5 and y is less than 5, we say both are less than 5. We remove the comment here, and then I want to add another else if statement, this, and I say if x is greater than 5 and y is less than 5. So we say only x is greater than 5. And I want to write one more, elif x is less than 5 and y is greater than 5. I can say print only y is greater than 5. Now you see, if I have put in all the conditions, if one of them is greater, if both of them are greater, now what if both of them are same? So both of them are equal to 5. So let's say else, and this print both are equal to 5. Now I did not have to specify here like x is equals to 5 and y is equals to 5. I do not have to specify anything with this else keyword. It just remains vacant over here, nothing over here. So now what condition do you think should it print? Execute the code. It says only y is greater than 5. Yes, that is correct. So this condition is being executed. If I change it to 7, run the code, it says both are greater than 5. Yeah, both are greater than 5. If I do it 2 and then run the code, only x is greater than 5. So you see how these conditions allow us to run the code that we want, only the code that we want. So we will also do a quick kind of an example of how you can use it. But just for understanding, let's just use the keyword here, change the keyword, or if x is greater than y 5 or y is greater than 5. Let's change all of these and keywords to or and see how it changes the output. So what do you think would be the output? It says if x is greater than 5 or y is greater than 5. So it should be both are greater than 5. So just ignore the text that is written here. Just focus on the condition for now. So why this code is executed? Because it is a or condition, not a and condition. For or, it will check if any of these is true. If this is true or this is true, if one of them is true, it will just return true, that okay, this whole condition is true. So now if I make it 4, so now both are less than 5, this one, because either this is true or this is true. It doesn't matter. Even if both are true, it will only say false if both of them are false. Okay, so this is how we can use these ones, and we can also use an not operator if x is not, let's say 5, like this. Oops. If x not, x if x is not, yeah, I missed the x. So if x is not 5, then print this. Let's just change it. X is not 5. In the code it says Okay, this is just a warning. We can just ignore this one. This is the output over here. X is not 5. Yes, X is not 5. So it just checks this one, executes this one. Now if X is 5, then it will skip this one and move on to the rest and check the conditions for these. So it says both are less than 5. Now do not look at the text, look at the condition here. Both are less than 5, so either condition is true. This y condition is true, so it says okay, run the code in between. So it's that simple. Now why would you want to use such a FL statement? So let's say you have two numbers. One number is 8 and another number is 3. So what you want to do is that if you want to check which of the two numbers is um, a prime number or is an even number. Let's say which of these is an even number. So how we can check for an even number? So even number is divisible by 2. So whenever we divide an even number by 2, we have a remainder of 0. So what we can do to check for the remainder? We can use the modulus operator. So we say if x mod 2 equals 0. So you say, so I haven't simply done x is equal to 0 or x is greater than. I've used an operation here, like expression. First it will compute this, and then it will check the result of this one with this. If this is 0, print x is even. If it is not 0, then it will be some other value, then it will print x is not even. Now what we can do is that, let's say we want to say if the number is even, we want to compute a square of that number. So let's say square is equals to x x square. So this will say x is even and its square is square, whatever the value here. So we can also write it with comma. Do not think about this because we already have seen this. And if the number is even, if x is even, we want to compute a cube of this number. So let's say cube is equals to x static cube. X is not even and its cube is, we say cube, like this. Right now we are not doing anything with y, and let's just say print code ended and the code. So it says x is even and its square is 64. So you see, if there is someone who says to you that like, okay, I have a number, I want a Python program to perform a particular operation. It can be like much more complex equation here, and I want to only do this if the number is even. If the number is not even, I want to do another equation. So you can use if else in that case. For example, I could do this plus 34 plus x divided by 2 plus x multiplied by 3, anything like that. So you see this is a much bigger equation. So you see this is the value that we have. So this is a much bigger equation, but it is only performed based on the value of x. Now if I change the value to 7, we only get the cube, right? 343. Now we can also do it with this, just do an AND operator. Now we want to check if both of the numbers are even or not, and y modulus 2 is equals to 0. If both of the number are even, I want to say square this plus square of 5. So we say both are even and its square is this. Now I also want to check if only one of them is even. So let's just make like this. So I say if x mod 2 is equals to 0, or y mod 2 is equals to 0. I say um, let's call the variable result. So what I want to do is that I want to compute the square of the x variable only. I can also then I can also compute the square of only the one which is a even number, but that would require more a bit more of concept. So that we will see in one of the following lectures when we go over in nesting and how nesting works in Python. So do this and say print either one of them is even, so x squared is result of this. Now let's see what it says. So it says either one of them is even, so x squared is this one. Let's start with this, make both of them even. Both are even and its square is 80. So it's not really a square, it's this equation. So you see how we can use and keywords, if else if statements and else statements to like basically run the code based on the conditions that we want. We can have different code for different conditions. You saw for this condition we were performing this equation, for this condition we were performing this equation, and for neither of these conditions we were performing this equation. So this is how we can use different codes. There's one thing that you need to know is that for this, that is for the syntax, not about the working. So we can also put it like this, if and this. Like if I do it with a bracket either side, that is correct. If I don't use a bracket, that is also correct. It's up to your choice which one you want to use. um, Generally it is suggested that if you have like longer conditions, like you have two more and statements and something like this, just use a bracket so it is easier to differentiate it from this, like okay, this is from where the condition starts and ends. If you have a very small conditions like just this one, it's easier to recognize like okay, this is the condition, so you can omit the brackets or you can place the brackets. That is just your personal choice. So that was all in this lecture. I would suggest you practice this quite a lot, because this is like one of the bases on which we create a lot of algorithms. Just go ahead, think out different scenarios where you would use if and else if or conditional statements, write the code for them, try out how it works, see what errors you get, try out with different logical operators and see how output varies. So that was all in this lecture. In the next lecture we will have a look at loops. So see you in the next lecture. Up till then, goodbye.